Gojo, without question, is one of the, if not the strongest character in all of Jujutsu Kaisen. That's been pretty well established ever since the series came out, and thankfully to his insanely broken hacks and abilities such as Infinity, Limitless, Six Eyes, all three of those paired together, he becomes one of the most broken anime characters out there, considering how insane his hacks are. Now, the reason why Gojo is such an anomaly of a character is because in terms of things like strength, speed, durability, he does not compare to majority of anime characters. Like, for example, the biggest feat we've seen in all of Jujutsu Kaisen is destroying a city. Meanwhile, there are verses out there like Dragon Ball where people are just capable of easily destroying entire universes. Yet Gojo still somehow, some way manages to get compared to some of the most powerful verses and anime characters out there. So for this video, I decided to put Gojo up against one of the most powerful anime verses there is, that being Bleach, and see how well Gojo would fare against the verse. Now, before we get into it, I first need to go over the abilities that make Gojo so broken and why people place him on such a pedestal of strength. The main ability, and by far his most powerful one that I want to talk about, is his Infinity. It is what makes Gojo so powerful, and it's what starts up these debates between Gojo and these other verses. Gojo's Infinity is a space that exists between Gojo and his opponent. And this is a finite amount of space. It's a limited amount of space that is divided up an infinite amount of times. So basically, an infinite amount of space exists between Gojo and his opponent, making Gojo impossible to reach. So no matter how close it seems like you'll get to Gojo, you will never fully reach him. As long as your attack travels any sort of distance, your attack will be stopped by Gojo's Infinity. And what makes this even more broken is the fact that it is completely automatic. It doesn't even matter if you're faster than Gojo, you cannot catch him off guard. His Infinity will automatically activate once any attack approaches Gojo. Now that we've established how broken Gojo's Infinity actually is, how would Gojo fare against the entirety of the Bleach verse? Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys were expecting a close matchup, that is not what we will be getting today, because the Bleach verse is one of the biggest counters to Gojo, considering how many characters exist within the verse that are able to completely nullify Gojo's Infinity, making it useless. Now, Gojo actually does a lot better than many would expect, because there are a lot of powerful Bleach characters that would have no way to bypass Gojo's Infinity, and therefore would just have no win con against Gojo. And the thing is, Gojo does have win cons against certain Bleach characters that are way more powerful than him, and that is through his Unlimited Void. Unlimited Void floods your brain with an infinite amount of knowledge, practically rendering you just completely brain dead. So if Unlimited Void were to hit any Bleach character, they would probably be completely stunned, unable to move, just as how Unlimited Void does it to Jogo in the anime. So Gojo would fare pretty well against powerful characters such as Ichigo or Kenpachi. And I know a lot of you are going to be upset over me saying that, but Ichigo and Kenpachi, fighters like them, don't have a lot of hacks. They mostly rely on their insane strength and speed. And frankly, neither one of those characters has any type of hack that would be able to allow them to bypass Gojo's Infinity. And I know people are going to bring up the argument of spiritual pressure and how they can just erase Gojo using spiritual pressure. However, where's the fun in that? If we're not going to apply verse equalization and actually make this somewhat fair, then there's really no point of me even making this video, because then I can just say, oh, every Bleach character beats Gojo. So to make it more interesting, we're obviously going to apply verse equalization, making cursed energy equal out to spiritual energy. So Gojo definitely does not perform as badly as many would expect him to. Now, would he be able to beat Ichigo and Kenpachi? Maybe, if he got lucky by hitting them with an Unlimited Void. Would Ichigo and Kenpachi have any way to bypass Gojo's Infinity? Unfortunately, no, they do not. They get completely stuck trying to get past it. But Bleach is notorious for the amount of characters that possess extremely broken abilities. So let's go over some of the abilities and characters that would just give Gojo an absolute thrashing. First person I want to start off with is Jugram of the Sternritters. Jugram possesses the Shrift B known as the Balance, and this is by far one of the most broken abilities in all of Bleach. Basically, using the Balance, Jugram can redirect all misfortune that he himself has experienced onto his opponent. Basically, if Jugram gets attacked or gets injured in any sort of way, his Shrift will recognize that as misfortune. And if Jugram is injured, he can redirect his misfortune onto his opponent, because his Shrift will recognize that his opponent has good fortune, and in order to balance out, his opponent now needs to experience Jugram's misfortune. So all of Jugram's injuries will be redirected straight onto his opponent. Jugram also possesses a shield that absorbs all the misfortune from his opponent's attacks. So let's say Gojo were to fight Jugram. Gojo fires out a hollow purple or something. Jugram's shield would just block that and take that as misfortune that Jugram can later throw onto Gojo. And what makes Jugram's the Balance such a perfect counter to Gojo's Infinity is that there is no attack that is actually occurring. All that's gonna happen is Jugram's the Balance is automatically gonna just swap the fortunes between Gojo and Jugram. Now the next person I want to cover is somebody who possesses practically the same ability as Jugram, except slightly different, and that person is Uryu with his antithesis. Just like Jugram's the Balance, Uryu's antithesis allows him to swap the damage between him and his own opponent, and that is what Uryu does to Jugram and Jugram does to Uryu in their battle. Basically, they both have Uno reverse cards. The difference is that Uryu's antithesis allows him to designate any two targets and completely reverse anything that has already occurred between the two of them. So basically, it's the same situation. If Gojo heavily injures Uryu, Uryu can just straight up swap the damage between him and Gojo. And the best part about this is that he can do this with inanimate objects as well. Let's say Gojo completely destroys a wall or something of the sorts. Or you could just swap that damage between the wall and Gojo will get completely annihilated at that point. So again, just think about this as an Uno reverse card. It happens instantly. Therefore, Gojo's Infinity will have absolutely nothing to block. Now, this next character might be a little overkill, but let's talk about Yhwach versus Gojo. There is absolutely no situation where Gojo would be able to do anything to Yhwach. Yhwach, first off, has the power to look and alter the future itself and choose the best future for him. That alone makes him practically unbeatable. Second, Yhwach has access to almost every Sternritter's Shrift because he gave all of the Sternritters their Shrifts except for a select few. So if Yhwach really wants to, he can use abilities like Gremmy's Visionary because those abilities are Yhwach's. And he can just use Visionary to completely wipe Gojo off the face of the earth only with his imagination. There is nothing that Gojo would be able to do against a tank of a character like Yhwach. Speaking of tanks, let's talk about Aizen versus Gojo. Now, this battle is interesting because a lot of people seem to have some misconceptions about Aizen and his abilities. For example, his Hado 90, that being the Black Coffin. A lot of people seem to think that Aizen's Black Coffin ability would allow him to bypass Gojo's Infinity because it distorts space and time. But distorting space does not let you get past Gojo's Infinity. You would have to distort space on an infinite level, which Aizen's Black Coffin has never been able to do. However, there is a way for Aizen to bypass Gojo's Infinity, and that is through Kyoka Suigetsu. A lot of people try to argue that Gojo is immune to mind control through this one statement from Shibuya that I'm showing on the screen currently, because in the statement it says that Gojo's 6 eyes rejects all possibilities when he sees Kenjaku. And a lot of people try to stretch this statement to say that Gojo is immune to any sort of mind control or illusionary techniques like Kyoka Suigetsu, but That is a huge reach from this one statement alone. Since we've never seen Gojo show actual resistance to illusions, we can safely assume Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu would work without issue. Especially considering that Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu was able to work against a being such as Yhwach, somebody who had absorbed the Soul King himself at this point, and had the power to destroy all 3 realms. Now, the last matchup I want to talk about for this video is Urahara, and the reason why Urahara versus Gojo is such a popular matchup is because of Urahara's Bankai. Basically, Urahara's Bankai allows him to reconstruct anything, that being himself, his opponents, and the space around him. So a lot of people like to think that Urahara's Bankai would allow him to just simply reconstruct Gojo's infinity into allowing him to bypass it. Now, personally, I don't think this would work in Urahara's favor because Gojo's infinity isn't just a barrier that you can break open. It is, again, an infinite amount of space between Gojo and his opponent. So Urahara would have to reconstruct an infinite amount of space if he wants to bypass Gojo's infinity. Therefore, I don't think that Urahara would have any good way to actually get through Gojo's infinity that we've seen so far. So that is just a very small handful of Bleach matchups that I thought of for this video, and as we can see, Gojo would definitely lose against the Bleach first. That much is obvious, but he wouldn't lose as badly as some people would think, and in fact, he would give a lot of characters a fair fight, especially characters who are not very hacks reliant, such as Ichigo and Kenpachi, who I mentioned earlier in the video. Now, if you guys want to see a part 2 to this video, let me know, and if you want to see Gojo put up against other verses, also let me know. But with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.